Good evening and welcome back to another episode of The Longing, where tonight we will be continuing to read Moby Dick. So, let's get going. And we will be continuing and finishing this chapter. So, here goes. And now, while both elastic gunwales were springing in and out, as the whale dallied with the doomed craft in this devilish way, and from his body being submerged beneath the boat, he could not be darted at that from the bows, for the bows were almost inside of him, as it were. And while the other boats involuntarily paused, as before a quick crisis impossible to withstand, then it was that monomaniac Ahab, furious with this tantalizing vicinity of his foe, which placed him all alive and helpless in the very jaws he hated. Frenzied with all this, he seized the long bone with his naked hands, and wildly strove to wrench it from its gripe. As now he thus vainly strove, the jaw slipped from him. The frail gunwales bent in, collapsed and snapped, as both jaws, like an enormous shears, sliding further aft, bit the craft completely in twain, and locked themselves fast again in the sea, midway between the two floating wrecks. These floated aside, the broken ends drooping, the crew at the stern wreck clinging to the gunwales and striving to hold fast to the oars to lash them across. At that preluding moment, ere the boat was yet snapped, Ahab, the first to perceive the whale's intent, by the crafty upraising of his head, a movement that loosed his hold for the time. At that moment, his hand had made one final effort to push the boat out of the bight, but only slipping further into the whale's mouth and tilting over sideways as it slipped. The boat had shaken off his hold on the jaw, spilled him out of it as he leaned to the push, and so he fell flat-faced upon the sea. Ripplingly withdrawing from his prey, Moby Dick now lay at a little distance, vertically thrusting his oblong white head up and down in the billows, and at the same time slowly revolving his whole spindled body, so that when his vast wrinkled forehead rose some 20 or more feet out of the water, the now rising swells with all their confluent waves dazzlingly broke against it, vindictively tossing their shivered spray still higher into the air. This motion is peculiar to the sperm whale. It receives its designation, pitch-poling, from its being likened to that preliminary up-and-down poise of the whale lance in the exercise called pitch-poling, previously described. By this motion, the whale must best and most comprehensively view whatever objects may be encircling him. So in a gale, the but half-baffled channel billows only recoil from the base of the Eddystone, triumphantly to overleap its summit with their scud. But soon resuming his horizontal attitude, Moby Dick swam swiftly round and round the wrecked crew, sideways churning the water in his vengeful wake, as if lashing himself up to still another and more deadly assault. The sight of the splintered boat seemed to madden him, as the blood of grapes and mulberries cast before Antiochus's elephants in the book of Maccabees. Meanwhile Ahab, half smothered in the foam of the whale's insolent tail, and too much of a cripple to swim, though he could still keep afloat even in the heart of such a whirlpool as that, helpless Ahab's head was seen like a tossed bubble which the least chance shock might burst. From the boat's fragmentary stern, Fedallah incuriously and mildly eyed him. The clinging crew at the other drifting end could not succour to him. More than enough was it for them to look to themselves, for so revolvingly appalling was the white whale's aspect, and so planetarily swift the ever-contracting circles he made, that he seemed horizontally swooping upon them. And though the other boats, unharmed, still hovered hard by, still they dared not pull into the eddy to strike, lest that should be the signal for the instant destruction of the jeopardized castaways, Ahab and all. nor in that case could they themselves hope to escape. With straining eyes, then, they remained on the outer edge of the direful zone, whose centre had now become the old man's head. Meantime, from the beginning all this had been descried from the ship's mastheads, and squaring her yards she had borne down upon the scene, and was now so nigh that Ahab in the water hailed her. "Sail on thee!" But that moment a breaking sea dashed on him from Moby Dick, and whelmed him for the time. But struggling out of it again, and chancing to rise on a towering crest, he shouted, "Sail on the whale! Drive him off!" The Pequod's prows were pointed, and breaking up the charmed circle, she effectually parted the white whale from his victim. As he sullenly swam off, the boats flew to the rescue. Dragged into Stubb's boat with bloodshot, blinded eyes, the white brine caking in his wrinkles, the long tension of Ahab's bodily strength did crack, and helplessly he yielded to his body's doom, for a time lying all crushed in the bottom of Stubb's boat, like one trodden underfoot of herds of elephants. Far inland, nameless wails came from him, as desolate sounds from out ravines. But this intensity of his physical prostration did but so much the more abbreviate it. In an instant's compass, great hearts sometimes condense to one deep pang, the sum total of those shallow pains, kindly diffused through feebler men's whole lives. And so, such hearts, though summary in each one suffering, still, if the gods decree it, in their lifetime aggregate a whole age of woe, wholly made up of instantaneous intensities. For even in their pointless centres, those noble natures contain the entire circumferences of inferior souls. "The harpoon," said Ahab, halfway rising, and draggingly leaning on the bended arm. "Is it safe?" "Aye, sir, for it was not darted." "This is it," said Stubb, showing it. "Lay it before me. Any missing men?" 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were 5 oars, sir, and here are 5 men." "That's good. Help me, man. I wish to stand." So, I see him. There, going to leeward still. What a leaping spout! Hands off from me. The eternal sap runs up in Ahab's bones again. Set the sail, out oars, the helm. It is often the case that when a boat is stove, its crew being picked up by another boat, help to work that second boat, and the chase is thus continued with what is called double-banked oars. It was thus now, but the added power of the boat did not equal the added power of the whale, for he seemed to have treble-banked his every fin, swimming with a velocity which plainly showed that if now, under these circumstances, pushed on, the chase would prove an indefinitely prolonged, if not a hopeless one. Nor could any crew endure for so long a period such an unintermitted, intense straining at the oar, a thing barely tolerable only in some one brief vicissitude. The ship itself, then, as it sometimes happens, offered the most promising intermediate means of overtaking the chase. Accordingly, the boats now made for her, and were soon swayed up to their cranes, the 2 parts of the wrecked boat having been previously secured by her, and then hoisting everything to her side, and stacking her canvas high up, and sideways outstretching it with stun sails, like the double-jointed wings of an albatross. The Pequod bore down in the leeward wake of Moby Dick. At the well-known methodic intervals, the whale's glittering spout was regularly announced from the manned mastheads, and when he would be reported as just gone down, Ahab would take the time, and then pacing the deck, binnacle watch in hand, so soon as the last second of the allotted hour expired, his voice was heard, "Whose is the doubloon now? Do you see him?" And if the reply was, "No, sir," straightway he commanded them to lift him to his perch. In this way the day wore on. Ahab, now aloft and motionless, anon unrestingly pacing the planks. As he was thus walking, uttering no sound, except to hail the men aloft, or to bid them hoist a sail still higher, or to spread one still greater breadth, thus to and fro pacing, beneath his slouched hat, at every turn he passed his own wrecked boat, which had been dropped upon the quarter-deck, and lay there reversed, broken bow to the shattered stern. At last he paused before it, and, as in an already overclouded sky fresh troops of clouds will sometimes sail across, so over the old man's face there now stole some such added gloom as this. Stubbs saw him pause, and perhaps intending, not vainly though, to evince his own unabated fortitude, and thus keep up a valiant place in his captain's mind, he advanced, and eyeing the wreck exclaimed, "The thistle the ass refused. It pricked his mouth too keenly, sir, ha! What soulless thing is this that laughs before a wreck? Man, did I not know thee brave as fearless fire, and as mechanical? I could swear thou wert a poltroon. Groan nor laugh should be heard before a wreck." "Ay, sir," said Starbuck, drawing near. "'Tis a solemn sight, an omen, and an ill one." Omen? The dictionary. If the gods think to speak outright to man, they will honourably speak outright, not shake their heads, and give an old wives' darkling hint. Begone, ye two are the opposite poles of one thing. Starbuck is Stubb reversed, and Stubb is Starbuck. And ye two are all mankind, and Ahab stands alone among the millions of the peopled earth, nor gods nor men his neighbours. Cold, I shiver. How now? Aloft there, do you see him? Sing out for every spout, though he spout 10 times a second. The day was nearly done. Only the hem of his golden robe was rustling. Soon it was almost dark, but the lookout men still remained unset. "Can't see the spout now, sir. Too dark," cried a voice from the air. "How heading when last seen?" "As before, sir, straight to leeward." "Good. He will travel slower now 'tis night. Down royals and top-gallant stunsails, Mr. Starbuck. We must not run over him before morning. He's making a passage now, and may heave to a while. Helm there, keep her full before the wind. Aloft, come down. Mr. Stubb, send a fresh hand to the foremast head, and see it manned till morning." Then, advancing towards the doubloon in the mainmast, "Men, this gold is mine, for I earned it, but I shall let it abide here till the white whale is dead, and then whosoever of ye first raises him, upon the day he shall be killed, this gold is that man's, and if on that day I shall again raise him, then 10 times its sum shall be divided among all of ye. Away now, the deck is thine, sir." And so saying, he placed himself half-way within the scuttle, and slouching his hat, stood there till dawn, except when at intervals rousing himself to see how the night wore on. And with that we come to the end of the chapter, and also the end of the episode. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon or night, no matter what time of day it is. I hope you all have a wonderful one of it. And as always, we will be back tomorrow for more of The Longing. Goodbye.